All right, Mexican Joe here, Northeast Texas Preppers. I'm out here with my friend Dawn. We're doing a little interview. She is a serious prepper gardener, very deep along the lines of Jack Spirko, and she's been to one of his classes. So Dawn's also my canning Yoda. She's the one I go to for all my canning. So we're out here on her property, got a lot of stuff going on. I just want to kind of show you guys that Northeast Texas is not tumbleweeds. This is pretty normal for us. So we're gonna break away here. I'm gonna go grab Dawn and we're gonna look at a bunch of her projects she's got going on. All right, here we go. Okay, all right, Mexican Joe here. I'm out here with Texas Dawn, right? And she's been out here kind of working my ass off today. It's been a lot of fun. We're up here in Northeast Texas, and if I can get her to stop for 3 minutes, we can do this interview.
I thought it was an action shot.
It is an action shot. We're out here on Dawn's property. We got a burn pile going. We got kids running around up in the front of the property. We got a lot going on. Dawn is my canning Yoda. She's the one that got me, I was already canning. She got me really deep into canning and pressure canning, food preservation. I was already doing it. She showed me that I wasn't doing it as well as she was, so I got better. So anyway, if she doesn't hit me with a stick. If she doesn't try to hit me with a stick.
I'm not going to hit
Okay, so we're out here on Dawn's property in Northeast Texas. Kids,
yes, eat another kolache.
Kids eating food. We're all dirty and nasty. We've been running all over the woods doing all kinds of stuff. All right, Dawn. I met you 9 or 10 months ago. We met at a meeting with a bunch of other guys doing some networking. You did a food preservation class, which you did it different than I did it, which was kind of cool. I like to see how people do it different than I do,
right.
And you did it quite a bit different. You were more into glass, where I was doing cans and other stuff, so that kind of gave me a different perspective. That was very cool. We need to do another interview on that later, but we got talking about Dawn's farm out here. She's got a farm out here in Northeast Texas. We're out here now. We've looked at it. She lives in town but has the farm she's working on. So I guess we got together because we started talking about different things that we both knew. We're both Bob Mayne fans. We're both Jack Spirko fans. Except you have been to a Jack Spirko weekend.
Yes, I have.
And you told me about that, and I thought that was awesome. Mm-hmm. And so now when Dawn says something to me about permaculture or about a hugel bed or a swale, I kind of know what she's talking about. But then because she's been to some of these classes, I pull a little more out of it. Like, what actually is a swale, and what is this? And with Dawn, I actually get to see it put into practice. So this is kind of cool.
Okay.
So how many acres is your total property, or ballpark, for security reasons? What's the ballpark of the property?
It's about 13 and a half acres.
13 and a half acres. And how big is you call it a lake, I call it a big ass pond.
It's a little lake or a small pond.
Okay.
Well, my dad calls it a stock tank, but it's way too pretty to be a tank.
It is. And it's how many acres?
It's about 2 acres.
It's about 2 acres. Now, when I first came out, Dawn had me come out to look at kind of some of the security stuff. That's more my realm on the property. And you had 30 fruit trees lined along the property line, right up close to the house, right up close to the road. And it was funny. I was like, oh, those are great. Those are beautiful trees. Dawn was like, well, that's where they're going. The problem was you could see the fruit trees from the road.
Right. And
we're trying to create a retreat environment here. And I kind of explained that we need to move those back kind of over the crest of the land, pull that back so it's not visible to everybody. Mm-hmm. After we talked about that, you got that, and we got that, and it went great. Mm-hmm. But now I've been back, and it's been, 6 weeks to 2 months, and all kinds of stuff has gone on. Mm-hmm. She was having fence work done. The contractor wasn't real great. Now she's got an excellent guy that's doing it. He's got my number. I'm going to throw him a bunch of business. Guy's really doing a great job. He does not want money up front. He wants to wait until he's got a phase of it done before he takes a pull on it. That's the kind of person you want. Mm-hmm. Now, what are you trying to do with this property?
Well, I'm trying to create a farm that I can live on. I mean, this right here, originally, I believe it was subdivided in the 50s from a larger property. It was a 20-acre farm. The residue that's left now from the heirs that I bought it from is just 13.5 acres. Way back when, in Civil War times, up to the 30s, this entire region was cotton plantations. I think the boll weevils what took out cotton.
Okay.
Okay. Then the family, the heirs of the family I bought it, it was actually a cattle farm. You know, just about 20 head of cattle, 20 acres. And so they just had a cow pasture and hay field. But then the father passed away in the 60s. Well, that's already 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So what I have now, essentially, because the widow and the kids didn't keep it up, is a farm that's been abandoned for 50 years.
And you can look just in the background and see that we
I have a 50-year regrowth forest, natural forest that's
Right.
that's nature has taken it back. But and I actually had Nicholas Bertner. He's working with nature out of Plano, Texas. He came out and I got a consultation from him to set up some permaculture food forest here, because you know, you break a permaculturist's heart when you talk about taking down part of a forest, and that's what we've done here is we've
Right.
cleared out this half-acre pasture. But to have a permaculture food forest, you can't just have a forest, you have to have a forest that's actually feeding you. It's a food forest. So we are redesigning just this half acre to bring it into a permaculture food forest. So that's what this portion of the property is.
Yeah, and we've kind of been joking as we've been working on this, because we've been out here and this is just breaking poor Dawn's heart that we're burning this wood, but there's actually more wood, timber, and brush here than she can shred due to cost. And still the ash and all that's going to really help out. We can scoop the ash and move it around the property.
Yeah, I mean, this is breaking a permaculturist's heart. It's like slash and burn agriculture. You're cutting it all down and burning. Well, I am bringing a lot of organic matter. You know, I still have my house in town, my neighborhood in town. Everyone still throws away their leaves. I pick up everybody's leaves in my neighborhood. I bring it out here for the natural organic matter to compost.
And this is funny because this we talked about this last time I was here. Texas Dawn is the girl who is the one that drives around in a pickup truck and picks up your leaves off the side of your curb that are in bags. Last time I was here, there were 30 or 40 bags of leaves still stacked up. She was like, "Those aren't ready yet. I'm not ready for those yet."
Yeah.
And
composting
now,
them.
yeah, and now they're all over the place. And we'll go up there to the house and look at what she's got going on at the garden. But this is just a crack up. I've never met anybody with as much energy as I've got in this, or who was as passionate
Joe
about
has
this.
more energy. I'm a housewife. Yes, I have a full-time job taking care of my 4 kids, but I don't have to. Fortunately, my husband bankrolls this. I don't have to go make a living. You have to earn a living
Okay.
and prep. I can
Okay.
make taking care of the kids and prepping my full-time job.
But it's been great. I mean, last night I got the text at 1 o'clock that said, "Hey, you know, when you come out, you know, I'll be there at this time." And I answered right away. She's like, "What are you doing up still?" I'm like, "I just got my new radio and I'm playing with it and I'm setting my frequency." So we're kind of the same. One of our big things that I think linked us up and kind of made us really good friends is when I met Dawn, she was teaching the canning and the food preservation, and I'd been doing that. And in the prepper network, we both found very high irritation with people who say they're going to do something and they don't.
That's right.
I'm going to can. I'm going to get buckets. I'm going to do this. I'm going to. These people weren't doing this.
And don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. You know, it's better to do something, even if it's not perfect,
And
than
fail.
to do nothing. It's better to do something and fail even, yes, than do nothing.
Because you're going to learn from that failure. It's doing nothing. You're getting nothing out of it. So when we got together, I actually kind of almost invited myself into the canning class that she gave. And, you know, the guys were like, "Yeah, I'll check with Dawn, and yeah, you can come." And we got into it, and we got into this serious conversation, and there was like 3 families of us that have been dealing with this. So don't say you're going to prep and not prep. It's really hard. And Dawn had mentioned to us that we were some of the first few people that were actually as active and as motivated as she was, and it's nice. So we stay in touch, and we're like, "What are you doing?" "I'm doing this, I'm doing that," and we're always blowing and going different directions. So this has been kind of fun. Now we're going to be all over the place on the property. We're going to see how long this video actually lasts. But today I just cracked up because we're out here and we're burning, and we got kids all over and all kinds of stuff, and they're playing and we're burning. Everybody's having a good time. and then Dawn just starts to glow.
I like to talk.
Well, because over here behind the fire, we got a fire going here.
Yes.
And we're going to show you. Okay, now hang on. Let's break right here real quick. I'm going to move the camera. We're going to go over and we're going to show you what Dawn found that just made Dawn's...
First, let me tell you, because you were talking about canning. I did grow up canning. My father would can pickles, and his sister, my aunt, would can fruit and can jellies. Specifically wild fruit jellies. She didn't even like to can domestic fruit because there was no thrill in that. She wanted to forage for wild fruit and make wild jelly. And I grew up doing that with her. I made peach jellies and blackberry jellies and lots of grape jelly, lots and lots of grape jelly. But she would always every year give everyone some plum jelly for Christmas, just a few jars. But she would never take me to go pick the plums. Because down in San Antonio, which is where I'm from, they were too precious. It's a harsher, drier climate down there, and there's just not a lot of wild plums.
So she wanted to show you where her
stash
was.
She would not even let me know where her secret place that she would go to forage wild plums. So my whole life, wild plums have been built up in my head as this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that you can only find a leprechaun to take you to it.
Well, and something else.
So let's remember that before we break.
Right. Well, something else dealing with that is that my brother-in-law, he loves strawberry jam. So here a little while back, he wanted to make strawberry jam, and we went to the store, and the money he spent on strawberries just about made me want to throw up. But yet today, before coming over here, my sister's got her own little network of friends going on. There was a friend that let us go over, and I've got 25-gallon bucket of wild strawberry plants. They overgrow her garden. And so I brought Dawn some. I wanted to stop and get some before we come over there. So I've got some from my place, from my sister's place, bring some to Dawn. To have somebody to where you can grow your own strawberries, and like you're saying, you're pulling this stuff fresh out of the forest, this fruit, and to be able to grow your own is so much easier, so much nicer, so much cheaper than having to go to the store and pay just this exorbitant amount of money for strawberries or for whatever your fruit is you're going to use.
Right.
So there you have it. I mean, to do that, it's self-empowering. It's very nice.
I made prickly pear jelly this year.
See there?
But that was hard work because of the thorns. It tastes good.
I gotta try a prickly pear.
I'll give you a jar.
There you go. There you go. Okay, let's come up here. We're gonna pause this real quick. We're gonna jump over and show you what Dawn found. All right, here. Dawn, what'd you find?
I found out I've got wild plums all over my forest.
Okay.
And I can't even believe it. I can't even believe it.
We found fruit on some of them.
Yes, we did. Little teeny tiny fruit. Now, they're not going to get any bigger than cherries, about that size, but you get a whole bunch of them. See? Here's fruit.
There you go. There you go.
See?
Hold still. Hold still. Let me see if I can get that. There you go. And those are going to get the size of cherries.
Yeah. And I don't even know how sweet they are without sugar. I don't know if they're naturally
and here's the funny thing is,
but wild fruit a lot of times isn't sweet enough to just eat off the plant. But if you mix it with sugar, it's amazing.
Okay, now here's what's funny is we're sitting here and we're burning, and we've got stuff all over. Okay, there's the burn pile, and it got burning back over into here, and then all of a sudden we look at where we're sitting. We're sitting in the middle of
a plum patch.
Yeah.
And I even saw these bushes covered in white flowers, and I thought, oh, they've got white flowers like plum trees. But it never crossed my mind
that they're plum trees.
That I would be so lucky in life to have bought a farm covered in wild plums. I just had someone today identify them for me, and I almost fainted. I couldn't believe it.
That's hilarious.
I just couldn't believe it.
So that's Dawn's big moment for the day.
Yes! Yes!
Okay, now here's something else too that I think is kind of funny. I think that I'm jacking my camera here. That people are going to crack up at this. This is everybody. We all watch Jack's videos and we listen to Bob's podcast and we just kind of see what everybody's doing. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, Dawn, you've been to one of Jack's PDCs.
Yes.
Was it a PDC?
Yes, actually it was. It was Zone 1 Urban Design Permaculture.
Okay. And what I don't think that anybody's going to understand, because Jack talks about doing earthworks. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is a shot of the serious fencing Dawn has done around her entire property. And as you look back here, she's had earthworks come in, and she's had gates put in. This is one of the trails that goes up towards the back. She's going to go up towards the swamp there. We looked at a piece of this, and we're talking about rice paddies and crawfish.
Yes, over at the
swamp area.
Yeah,
the head end of your lake.
The head end of my lake, because it's a swamp already.
Right. So you've got all these fruit trees. You got all this stuff going on.
I have mature pecan trees and a walnut tree.
Right. I mean, and plus all the stuff you're getting ready to plant. Now this area right here, I'm trying to be cautious not catch anybody else's property. This was all just wild area right in here.
Yes, this right here was the edge of that 50-year-old regrowth forest. This is what it broke our heart to knock some trees down. You had to clear out, but I had to have an area to put in my permaculture food forest. And I'm trying to incorporate the largest trees. I have some oak trees here. Oaks too, because of the acorns. That's also an edible.
It's an edible, you know. You make stuff out of that, but also the deer love them. I mean, my rabbits on my property just love them.
Yeah,
and they're huge.
Hopefully, I can keep the deer back in the forest. And
good luck with that. But of course, now I saw that you've reseeded all of this. You know, what did you use to seed this with? I saw some oats. Okay. Oh, I've seen some clover.
Yeah, what I do now, you can actually go to Tractor Supply, or I'm sure any feed store, and they have pasture seed mixes. But this mix was actually marketed to hunters to put out to make a
food plot.
Yeah, they called it a plot spike. Yeah, to make a place for good foraging for deer, to attract deer to your place. And I went and I looked at the ingredients. Well, the ingredients are like, was it triticale? The rye wheat.
Yeah, cross. Rye wheat. Chicory.
It would have cereal
chicory.
Rye, chicory, oats, real wheat.
A couple of different clovers. I'm a big fan of clover.
Clovers, and it also had chicory, and it had turnips and radishes, like the daikon turnips.
Right, radishes. Yeah.
And this right here was to make a salad buffet for
the deer.
Well, then I listened to Jack, and he talks about cover crops to improve your land. Well, for a cover crop for your land, you want to put something, in permaculture, you want to put something that is a biomass generator, something that will create a lot of carbon. That would be like your cereal crops, like your oats or your rye.
Right.
And then you want to put in a nitrogen fixer. Oh yeah, by the way, this also has Austrian peas in it. That was another one of the ingredients. Well, Austrian peas and clover are nitrogen fixers. Those legumes, they are going to, with that symbiotic relationship they have with that, is it bacteria? It's either bacteria or fungus. It's one or the other. It's going to take nitrogen out of the air and put it into the soil. And then you have dynamic accumulators. What a dynamic accumulator is, it is a plant that puts in a deep tap root that pulls the minerals out from the subsoil, mines them, brings it to the surface, and then when their leaves fall down, the minerals are brought to the surface for the other plants. So it's a perfect seed mix to grow soil, to grow and improve your soil. And I became a real believer in cover crops. I didn't even do all that fancy stuff. I just put ryegrass. A lot of people put ryegrass here in the South on our yard in the winter. We'll have the greenest grass we've had the whole year, the ryegrass that we have on the winter, because it dies as soon as it gets hot. And even 5 or 6 years later, my yard would look better, even though I didn't put any more ryegrass out, would look better than my neighbor's yard because of that extensive root system and that extra organic matter that those biomass generators put out. That was the cereal rye.
Right.
So anyways, I'm going through permaculture and listening to Jack Spirko, and I'm trying to figure out the best cover crop. I'm just randomly looking at this stuff that's marketed to hunters, and everything that was in that that seed mix was what I needed for a cover crop to create better soil.
Right, so you can turn around and you can buy a ready-made mix, get everything you need, and you can buy it at Tractor Supply, Walmart, whatever, because I buy a lot of it at both of them. So,
Academy, all of them.
So there you have it.
Yep.
So This
no shipping.
Yeah, no shipping. Yeah, no Prime Amazon stuff.
That's right.
And when I use Bob's stuff, I make sure I got my Prime so I get my free shipping, but Bob gets credit. So this kind of broke your heart to kind of pull all of this out.
I mean,
but then again, you found your trees over here.
I found some plums, and they're going to stay. And I see some other areas now that I know what they are. I see some other areas on the property that also have some plums.
And then
what we're going to do is we have this slope coming from the house, going down to here where the water draws through the property. We're going with the contour, so the water will be stopped as it goes through. So we'll map out the contour in curved lines going down the property. We will dig out, I'll give you a tiny little example. We will dig out a swale, okay? So as the water's running downhill, it'll hit there. The extra soil we dig out will be a little berm. Think of it like a tiny little dam. And what that means is the water will run down, it'll fill up this little shallow ditch, and then it'll gently spill out. It'll just slow down. And what that does is it gives you deep hydration in your soil. You know, it's kind of a drought preventative because you're putting more, rather than just letting all of your water run off your land, you're making your water soak into your land. And water is life.
And you're also slowing your erosion.
Yeah, you will not be losing soil either, correct?
Right.
Because you'll be stopping the erosion, and you'll be capturing soil, and you'll be capturing water. Well, the ideal for permaculture is you put this texture into your land so that you're harvesting all this water, slowing it down, making it passively soak into the ground. Then the plants that you put in, you can do it just annual seeds like what I have, the little bitty clover seeds and the ryegrass seed and the turnip and radish seeds. You go into these berms that you have on the downside of the swale, and you plant them with trees. And the trees that you're looking for, primarily are trees that will produce something you can eat. This is why it's a food forest. You're making food. Well, where that you're going outside of the box than a traditional orchard is you're interspersing these tree plantings with nitrogen fixing trees, because the only beans and peas and clover and veg are not the only nitrogen fixers out there. There's nitrogen fixing trees, and ironically, a lot of the trees that we think of as invasive species, like mesquite trees, mimosa trees, locust trees, those are all also actually nitrogen fixing trees. So if you intersperse your fruit trees with the nitrogen fixing trees, and you continually keep the nitrogen fixers pruned, they will keep putting nitrogen into the soil and fertilizing the fruit trees for you. And when you're chopping, they call it chop and drop. When you're pruning those trees and you just put the material down on the ground, it's also adding the organic matter. That's the biomass generator. Because trees are the ultimate soil curse. Trees are what makes soil. Because trees, if they're nitrogen fixing trees, leguminous trees, you're getting your nitrogen. But trees are also, they're biomass generators. They're gigantic solar panels. They're capturing all that energy from the sun. They're creating, and they're dynamic accumulators. They are sending deep tap roots down into the subsoil of the ground and pulling the minerals up. Wherever you have a forest, your forest is creating soil. That's what they do. And that's where, it's kind of sad that we're having to burn some of these trees, because that's what, when you do slash and burn agriculture, you're cutting down that forest. Well, you don't have anything that keeps creating that soil and creating that fertility, and then the soil can wear out. But with this permaculture system, we're trying to create a long-term system that will keep feeding itself and keep creating its own fertility in its own soil.
But also on the back, when we were out in the back, you had a bunch of trees that were old rotted trees, and you dropped them, left them lay, they kind of broke up, and then you had some new trees that were down, and we talked about that. And just, you're creating your own mulch.
Right.
You're basically, like you had said back there, you're going to create your own dirt.
Because that's what trees do. That's what forests do. They are creating soil. And a forest grows on the decayed ruins of an old forest.
An old forest, the leaves, the wood, just the dead trees, and whatever else.
Yeah, so when you're doing, the permaculture food forest, you've got your texture, you've got your mixture of plants, You've got your, your water harvesting, and the other element is if you're introducing animals. If you can, in between the swells, if you could do micro pastures, micro paddocking, little paddocks. If you have animals grazing through, there will be depositing their manures in there, and it will just continue adding to the fertility of the entire system. Because if you think about a forest, no one has to water a forest. No one has to fertilize a forest. If you leave, like this land's a perfect example. This is what happens when you take a piece of land for 50 years and just walk away and don't do anything to it. Well, what happened? The forest took it back.
It blew it up.
Nobody had to take care of this forest. A forest creates, and it supports itself.
There you go. All right, now we're going to take a walk out back here. I want to look at some of the trees, some of the down trees, to go over that exact thing that we just talked about.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, we didn't have to go as far as we thought we were going to. There was a really good example way in the back, but Dawn found one right here real close. Okay, what you got?
Yep, this right here, looks like it was a fallen pine tree. You can see it's decomposing. There's two ways that plants decompose. They can do a bacterial process and a fungal process. Wood normally decomposes with the fungal process. I'm getting into the weeds there, but this right here is this is how a forest works. This is how it creates soil. I mean, it creates it with the tree litter too. I mean, here, look at this. Look, just go a little bit deep. Look how rich and black that is. Just beneath as few layers of leaves that are the natural mulch. Look at how black and rich that soil is.
It's the mulch and the compost that people go out and buy, and nature makes it for you right here on the property.
This right here is the entire theory behind the Back to Eden gardening method, is that if you just put wood chips down on the ground, it will make soil. And this right here, it's the same thing, just writ large. And this right here is what we're imitating when we create a hugel mound. We're taking wood and burying it in the ground and it'll rot this exact same way in the ground, and all the nutrients that were stored up in the wood will slowly be released back out, and it'll hold water. So for the hugel mound, it's also drought prevention.
Right, now,
because it creates a water reservoir.
And right there, we talked about this farther back in the woods when we were looking back there. You've got a tree that was already rotted, already dead, already down, and you're sitting there playing with it, and it's falling apart.
Yeah.
Now, in building the fence and building some of your trails around your fence to deal with this, right there to your next to you, we've had to drop some other fresh trees.
Right, exactly.
But what you explained to me there was, what we're doing there is, you've got old, dead, rotting, and then you've got, in 2 years, the next phase will start doing that. So you're creating cascading events of rotting timber.
Exactly. It's called time stacking. If you were to get this whole bit, if I were to gather it up and put it in, this is wild. Think of this is in the wild. If we were to domesticate this, put this into a vegetable garden bed back by the house, we would put this in. It would be slowly releasing nutrient. As this is consumed, the next portion would start to rot, and it would be consumed. And you could actually have time stacked into your garden 20 years worth of fertility that will slowly be used up from the rotting wood, and it's different.
And you're calling that time stacking.
Decay. Yeah, time stacking. Yeah, because it's like you said, it's a cascading series of events. Each one will be rotting, will be ready to release nutrients.
So as you're adding mulch and compost and nutrients to your garden or your whatever you're doing, every year you add more and more and more, because the stuff before is just going away. Yeah. Which is why your compost pile starts out at 4 foot tall, and in the matter of a year it's 12 inches tall, because it's decomposed and done what it's supposed to do.
I guess this is good that I mentioned the fungal thing, because the thing is, the fungal decomposition is very slow. Like if you were to make a completely wood chip compost pile, even turning it and everything, you're probably looking 3 or 4 years to get that compost, and that's with turning it. Whereas if it was just softer matter like leaves or grass clippings, if you're truly dedicated, you can get it in 2 or 3 weeks. Let it sit more passively about 6 months.
But this, because it's a harder surface, it's taking longer.
Exactly, and there's also different mechanisms that are working on it, the wood versus the bacteria.
The bacteria, the bugs, and then the bugs are turning around and creating more of a compost.
Yeah, yes. In this scenario, termites are your friend. The rest of the time, they're not.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Well, that's that section. Okay. We'll keep moving and we'll see what else we can find. We got all kinds of little projects you got working because you're like me. You got so much energy. You got 12 projects going, and I know your husband just kind of giggles about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Okay, now we talked about earthworks and all of the earthworks that you've done here. You actually had to put a culvert in right here.
Yeah, this right here is not so much permaculture, it's just basic civil engineering. We couldn't access the back of the property after a heavy rain because this area is so low it would turn into a mud bog. So we're just having ways so the water is still able to run through. We'll still be able to harvest the water in our pond, use the water in our other growing systems, you know, in our eventual rice paddy, but we have to have this culvert here at this one particular location so that we can still travel across it.
Right. And this actually took some equipment to do a lot of this stuff.
Yes, this right here, and we're actually short another load of gravel or two.
Okay.
Still a little bit high here on the culvert. So
but you also use this to get back up the road there behind you.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, the way you've got this place set up, you've got these driving trails so you can get stuff from the front to the back, also so you can turn around and do stuff back there, four-wheelers and other stuff, gators.
Yeah, barring the lake, this is the lowest point on the property. So, but it's impossible to get from one side of the property to the other without passing through this point.
Right. So you have to do a little bit of civil engineering to deal with this.
So this is just a little basic civil engineering.
And then over here you've got your fence here where you basically you pass it on across the property, and of course it's going to go back into the creek or the swamp back over there. You're leaving your property for all about 60-70 feet, and then it comes back on. So it's not really a big deal, and at this point nobody really cares. But this is a really great fence, and it just kind of shows that sometimes you have to do things to make your property work for you.
This is infrastructure, and I tried not to go cheap on this. I tried to put in something that would be secure and quality, you know, secure for animals, also secure. Anytime Joe's a security expert, but you know, one of the big secrets of security is just make your place harder to get into than the next guy. So
right. Well, and you've got a lot of stuff going on, but you've also got neighborhood dogs that you're trying to keep out of your property.
Yeah,
so dealing with some
of have a problem with my livestock. Yeah, I need to try to protect them.
And you don't want to have a problem with the neighbor's dogs because then that creates conflict. And I think later on in the video we'll get into some areas where we talk about building alliances with neighbors and some of that stuff. And that's really become something new to Dawn is explaining alliances and how that works and how it doesn't hurt you. It actually helps you even before the alliance is required. So that'll be kind of nice. But we'll get into that here in a little bit, and we're going to continue on and go look at some more stuff. We were going to walk away here, and then all of a sudden Dawn went off on another tangent.
Because I'm showing him how amazing the soil is. Kind of a variation of the swale technique that we're talking about for doing a permaculture food forest. In the 30s, during the Dust Bowl, people understood that they were having a problem. They needed to capture water, put it in their land. They need to keep their soil from blowing away. Well, here in East Texas, you know, at that time, this would have all been cleared field. It would not have been this forest. They started putting in what they called at the time, they called it terracing, but it wasn't terracing like a stair step. It was terracing where you did
a berm.
Yeah, you actually had berms going across the land with the contour, so it catches water. And Joe, you can see right here where the water is bringing it down. You know, we have all of this soil creation from all of these trees, because trees literally turn rocks into dirt. Okay, so we have all this soil creation, and it's getting caught, and it's not running down and going away. It's getting caught by this berm
and being slowed down.
And look at how rich and black.
Okay, now step back off to your left over in there. Now step forward right there. Now come in right here. Come in forward right there. And people can see as you walk towards me, I want to show them the difference of the elevation. Yeah, I mean look at how dense that dirt is.
And this dirt is black. It is black.
Show me your hand. Yep.
See where I'm coming up
Yeah.
on the rise. Okay.
Yep. And then, you know, Dawn was like, look at the dirt you're standing in.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't even find my foot. Where am I at? I'm back here. Okay.
And you got to understand, this is what, slash and burn agriculture would do. You cut that forest down and you'd have this amazing dirt and you grow crops in it. But you know what? You do that, 10 years from now, that dirt is just going to be pale sand.
Yep.
All that nutrient's going to be just used up and consumed out of it.
And then we've got all this forest litter and more wood and everything, and you keep going. I mean, you can look at the trail all the way back that we walked in and just see, and you can look at how dark and juicy and vibrant this dirt is. It's just insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is why we get into this.
Yeah.
All right, let's go keep going, see what else we got.
While we hang out with the hippies.
Well, yeah, while we hang out with the hippies. There you go. Okay.
Okay.
We're walking around, and we were just looking at the really black dirt there and everything that was going on, how great the forest was. And then you noticed, let me show you what's not good.
Yeah, this is what happened. The half acre that I took out was the half acre that was the closest to the house. It was probably the last portion that the forest started invading. So it was really, there were a few large trees, but it was mostly brush. Okay, so the forest hadn't really been to work here. This probably was what was most recently a pasture. Well, this is what happened. Look at that. Where did the black go? It was all used up.
It's sugar sand.
Yeah, this is called sugar sand. Yeah, well, I've seen sugar sands even wider than this. But this right here, this is what it turned into. If you don't continue to grow your soil, this is what your field's going to turn into. And I'm not a hippie, and I'm not anti-chemical. But I do know this. If all you add back to your soil is nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, the NPK, sure, you're going to be able to grow plants, but there's other things in life. I mean, just like that you need for life, just like when a human being eats. We eat proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, but there's also vitamins and minerals that we need. It's the same thing for your plants and for our crops and for food. You don't want sand that you just pour a bunch of NPK on and get food out of it. You want rich soil that's full of life, full of trace minerals, a broad range of elements, plants and ultimately us, because we're eating the plants. For us to have the best diet, we don't want to just eat one thing. We want to eat a broad range of things, and we want all the little bits, that maybe we could survive if we didn't have it. But for optimal health and optimal life, you have all of those trace elements and trace minerals. But this is what you get if all you do is put synthetic fertilizers on the land. This is what you get. This is what it turns into.
And when you start,
nature makes soil like that. And if you try to do a system more like a food forest, and there's more to permaculture than just a food forest. Permaculture has got a broad range of techniques to try to maximize life, because that's what permaculture is about. It's trying to maximize life in your growing systems and in your life. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make a system that can feed us, that can feed our animals, and continue feeding the soil so that life is maximized and sustainable. Whether you think oil's going to run out or you just think the dollar's going to collapse.
Yeah. So, but what it really is you're using chemicals to enhance your growth. Why not use nature to do it on its own and fix the problem naturally?
And you're going to get a better product.
Right, without chemicals.
Yeah, because this right here will grow anything you want if you put your NPK on it. But if you want something that's really good, really strong, and really tasty, and really healthy for you, you want to do a more natural growing system.
There you go. Okay, we've moved across another section of the property. We've got a couple of things going on. One is we wanted to talk about the Hugel mound. Now, until I started listening to Jack, I'd never heard of one or knew what one was. So Dawn is going to sit here and explain this to us. There you go, so you can see what the depth is.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, permaculture, it's a funny sounding word. We could just very easily say a woody cord raised bed. It doesn't even have to be raised bed, just a woody cord bed. And what that means is you have wood that's in the ground. It could be elevated, a raised bed. It could be elevated with sides or without sides. And you've got wood that's buried and rotting, and then you have your plants growing on top of it. What we're doing here at our property, I'm not burning up all the wood that was breaking my heart. We're trying to bury some of it. So what we've done is we've gone into the heart of one of those old berms from the 1930s, and we are getting wood from down trees on the property and wood that we've had to clear on the property, and we're burying it inside of these mounds.
Again, you're stacking because you've got old rotting wood with fresh wood.
That's right. Some of it's rotting, some of it's fresh. Now the first year or two, the mound will absorb nitrogen as it's trying to rot. So the first year or two, you're probably going to have to supplement with some extra nitrogen. But the nitrogen didn't go away. It's still there. It's being stored. And as it continues the rotting process, it will release it back into your plants. And what this does for us, particularly in Texas, this gives us because that, if you've ever touched rotting wood, it's spongy. It holds water like a sponge. So we're not just putting long-term fertility in the ground that we can access for 20 years. We're also creating a spongy reservoir that will hold water and help drought-proof the garden bed or the garden plants that you put on top of this mound.
So once you get this and you smoothen this whole thing out and it's got your wood in there and it's decomposed, one, you're creating a berm because the property slopes one way from what the camera's looking at from the right to the left. So one, you're slowing your water.
Yeah, I'm still going to be catching the water as it flows across.
Okay, and it's going to soak in. Now, what are you going to do with the top or the sides of this mound? Are you going to plant trees and vegetables or whatever on it?
My current plan, subject to change, but yeah, my current plan is to plant things like fig trees and pomegranate bushes.
There you go.
Berry bushes.
So what they'll do is they'll get in, they'll establish their roots underground in this spongy, absorbent area, and it's still a berm. So even after the wood, 5 years or so down the road, is gone, we've got nutrients, we've got moisture there, so they're already well established.
Yeah, exactly, and the fig trees and the blueberry bushes and the pomegranate bush/tree, it's like a large bush, small tree. They're essentially going to be acting like a forest themselves. They're initially going to live and enjoy the fertility of these old trees, but they will also create more soil as their life cycle continues.
There you go. So this is a hugel mound.
Yes, a hugel mound.
Okay.
It's just a woody cord bed.
Okay.
And because it's not very well known, I've had a hard time explaining to workers what I want. So it's not set up exactly the way I wanted it, but it's close enough, and we're going to make it work.
There you go. Okay, remember I mentioned to you about the lady who ran around the yard and ran around the neighborhood and stole your leaves? Here's where your leaves went. This is, how many, what have you got out here in leaves?
You see?
Hang on, I'm coming in. Hey, I got it. You go ahead.
Do you see the soil?
How black it is?
Yeah. It's not completely rotted. We had to utilize it before I could let it finish composting. So some of it's going to have to compost in place. But this right here, I have sand. What I need is more organic matter in that sand to make it fertile soil. Well, your trees are your soil creators, and they primarily make it with their leaves. They make the soil for themselves. When they die, their rotting wood makes soil, but all of my neighbors in town, and probably all of your neighbors too, or most of them, they're gathering up all of those leaves and they're throwing them away. They're throwing away all that fertility that their trees created for them with both hands. So what I'm doing is I'm harvesting all of the fertility that they were just going to put in the landfill, and I'm putting it into my future raised bed garden. And this plan right now for this bed, once this is all going to be turned in, I plan on doing the John Jevons grow biointensive method of putting in beds. So it'll be more thoroughly incorporated. Now, John Evans would never recommend using this much compost because he's all about sustainability and growing that much compost on site and putting in, and that's wonderful. But I don't have to do that yet. And if there's resources out there for me to make my soil richer, I'm going to go ahead and do it.
There you go. And this, you know, it's hard to do this in a video to show everybody how everything's set up, but that right there is the most elevated part of the Hugel mound, and then it slopes back to the left quite a distance. I don't want to catch, you know, other people's properties on the video if I don't have to, but that shows you all of this. It stacks on top of each other, which is back to permaculture. One thing feeds another, which feeds another, which feeds another. So it just keeps rolling, and this is just great because, like I said, I was out here 6-9 months ago, and I laughed at all these bags of leaves that were out here, and now there they are with apparently quite a few more bags. So your pickup truck has done you well.
Yes.
Okay, now we're going to get over here and we're going to look at some other stuff with some really exciting stuff with her box garden.
Yes.
Okay, now we're in a new area, and what are you calling this?
Well, these are my raised beds. They are primarily, except for the ones that got the little citrus trees in them, these other 8 beds are actually beds constructed pretty much the Mel Bartholomew square foot gardening method, and I want to talk about that. It's also an organic method. It's not considered permaculture, and I'll go into why, but I think that you don't have to lock yourself in the box. I think that you can use multiple tools to try to create the greatest food security you can for yourself.
Okay.
And square foot gardening, or some of the elements of square foot gardening, is some of the easiest gardening there is.
Okay. Now, right now, you said you had one bed in particular you wanted to show us right off the bat.
Yeah, this one's empty right now, and I want to talk about what a square foot gardening bed is.
Okay.
Oh, let me tell you one more thing. Joe, can you pan and get that stump?
Oh, yeah, let's do that. That's funny.
There was a humongous oak tree, probably here in Texas.
Why don't you go over and stand next to it so we can get some size?
Okay, yeah, I want you to get some scale. I'm 5'3". This tree was at least 300 years old. I haven't counted the rings, but there's no way. This tree was here before the white man was in Texas. I would never have killed this tree. I would never have cut it down. What happened was the previous people who were going to purchase the property, lightning hit the tree. And the other purchasers were concerned the tree was going to fall down. So instead of trying to save the tree, they had the tree cut down. But they left it in place. They didn't have it removed. So that actually worked for me because this is a big, gigantic oak stump. You know what oak is used for? It's used for growing mushrooms.
There you go.
That's how you grow mushrooms. So I'm leaving this oak stump, and I am going to cultivate mushrooms in it.
There you go. Not to mention, I think that Ricky, one of our friends who's helped you out with some of the earthworks and some of the other guys, they got some wood out of it.
They got some firewood, but they didn't get all of it. This was so huge, you could not remove it from the site. So I have a little secret about my square foot garden bed here. I actually have a gigantic oak tree and all of its root system buried underneath all of these beds, which is essentially functioning as a gigantic Hugelkultur bed. Hidden under the ground. Because you can see, this right here is the subsoil it was grown in.
You're good right there.
A little bit more clay, but still basically that sand. That tree was able to take that orangey clay and sand and turn it into black soil. It was black soil on the original topsoil that was by that tree. And it was able to turn that into dirt that other plants could grow in.
There you go. So. And that's just great. It's the largest Hugel bed you could ever have.
Yes. Yes, because as big as your tree is on top, it's probably darn near as big underground from the root structure that was there, especially an oak tree. Those are very hard, woody roots.
There you go.
So it's a pre-made Hugelkultur bed.
Okay, I'm going to stop here for a quick second. Okay, this subject here on this part is about the beds and particularly where this bed came from.
Yeah, I have 8 beds here, but one of these is not like the other. this bed right here, I was actually outside of a fast food restaurant. They'd had a new neon sign delivered, and they had a large wooden crate out in the parking lot that they were about to destroy and throw away. And I'm like, that big wooden bed looks just like a raised garden bed. So I went ahead and got it to make my raised. Now, it's not cedar, it's not treated wood, so it will not last for long term. This wood is going to rot out and get eaten up by termites. A lot of people just want to use cedar because it's 100% natural. I have this wood here. I do have some treated wood. I do have some cedar wood on some of my other beds. You know, some people, they're scared to death to use treated wood because they are thinking whatever chemicals are in this pressure treated wood are going to leach out into their soil, kill the microbial life in their soil, and put poison into their food. All the studies that they've done, especially with the modern day treated wood, it doesn't leach out. It'll be fine. And besides, everything's a poison. It's just the dose that matters. You know, sometimes you just got to relax a little bit.
Well, that, and if you want some poison, just inhale.
There you go. Or exhale, you know, all that carbon dioxide.
Okay, now behind you, what have you got in that bed there?
This bed, this is my first, okay, like I said, I grew up in San Antonio. When we gardened in San Antonio, our soil is a lot like Jack Spirko's, which means it's very alkalinic, lots of limestone, lots of caliche, lots of rock. We were able to grow potato plants. We were never able to grow potatoes because we didn't have enough soil for them to be able to put out their tubers. Well, I decided to go ahead and plant some potatoes in one of these deep boxes. This is kind of an experiment for me. I have since found out you plant the potatoes and then you continue mounding dirt on them as they grow, and that's what gets the plant to produce more and more tubers. I planted them in deep boxes thinking, oh, it's got all that good soft soil. It's going to shoot lots of tubers down into that soil. We'll just see. I'm probably not going to get as good of a harvest as I should have, but I think it'll be okay. And the onions are getting pretty close to being ready because I'm growing these as green onions.
Okay, because that was one of my next questions, was that in nature, if you don't pull a potato, you don't pull an onion, you don't pull a garlic, what happens? It multiplies.
Right.
So in worst case scenarios, if you don't pull it, it'll be okay.
Yeah, well, on this edge here, this very edge, I have garlic.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I have garlic.
I hadn't seen that earlier.
Yeah, so this, well, you can't tell at this stage, but these are garlic, these are the onions, and these are the potatoes.
And then you got your pecan trees there ready to go in here before long.
I have some pecan trees. I have some mature pecans here.
Yep.
I got them some little brothers.
Okay. And now all of these are a little bit different.
Yes.
Are they all kind of the same? I guess you're kind of running different things in different beds.
Yes. Yes, I have an herb garden here. This one's unplanted. Potatoes and onions. This is rhubarb and asparagus.
Okay.
Here is blackberry, raspberry.
This one's blackberries right here.
Yes, and that one's raspberry. And on these two beds are strawberry beds. Except for the potatoes and onions, these are primarily perennial plants.
Right.
So I'm hoping I'm doing this more of the, I say the square foot gardening method. I'm not doing everything of this method. I'm just doing the soil mixture. More of my vegetable production I hope to do in ground with the John Jevons Grow Biointensive method, but maybe not completely. See, that's the thing. I like to look at all of these different gardening methods and pick and choose and take the best elements of each. For example, I really like the soil mixture in the square foot gardening, but I don't plant with their spacing. I like the soil growth and development of the Grow Biointensive method, but I'm not too keen on their spacing either. I like Steve Solomon's Gardening When It Counts, his organic fertilizer method, which is a perfect adjunct to use in the square foot males mix square foot gardening method or in Grow Biointensive, because his organic fertilizer mixture is such a good one. You can add it to any other system, you know, and it would be a perfect complement.
See, and I was noticing that with your spacing over here on the strawberries, when you were talking about spacing, you're pretty spread out.
There's actually more was put in. Not all of them came up. This right here, I let my kids do it. I let my girls do it because I wanted them to take a little ownership of it.
Okay.
So I try not to get super
technical with them, and don't stifle them.
Yeah.
And then we brought you these.
Oh,
now these here,
I'm
these
going to be able to.
These were ones we pulled out of somebody's garden who said that they were going nuts.
Yeah, those. This right here is a raised bed garden that's primarily done with the methods that Mel Bartholomew recommends for his square foot gardening. The secret of Mel's gardening technique is his soil mixture, which is 1/3 vermiculite, coarse vermiculite, and that's what's expensive. 1/3 peat moss, but you can cut the peat moss in half with coconut fiber, which I did, so I would get maximum variety and nutrition in my soil. The reason why you would do that is because coconut fiber is renewable, and the sphagnum peat and moss, probably harvesting it faster than nature can make it for us again. And then the last third of the soil mixture is compost. But the secret to the compost is it must be compost from 5 different sources. It's the same thing with the food that we eat. We have to have a wide variety of food on our plate to have a healthy diet. To have healthy compost and healthy soil, you have to have a wide variety of components in that soil. So for example, I have mixtures of mushroom compost, which is a fungal-based compost, cow manure compost, chicken manure compost, leaf mold, which is composted leaves, food scraps. I try composted cotton burr. Earthworm castings would be another example. But you want, even though 1/3 is compost, you don't want to just go buy a bag of compost. You want to buy at least 5 different brands, 5 different varieties of compost, and mix that and make that your compost mix for the square foot garden bed.
Okay. And how much is each bag of the mixture buying?
Oh my goodness, you're spending a lot of money.
Okay.
You're going to be investing a lot. And frankly, the most expensive thing is going to be that vermiculite. I bought 4 cubic feet bags. I think I paid $27 a bag. It's far more expensive if you buy little tiny bags they sell for growing orchids. Don't buy it that way. Go to a feed store and buy the big bags. But as you use a square foot garden bed, the coconut fiber and the peat moss is not really going to disappear. The vermiculite's not really good to disappear. What's going to be consumed by the growth of the plant is the compost. So you recharge your garden with more compost. At that point, you can actually be making your own compost and try to recharge it with that. But your initial investment, but you got to look at this. This is a food creating machine. You know, when you build this and you invest the soil in, when you look at making a square foot garden bed, you got to look at it as a food creating machine, and you got to look at it as a long-term investment. So even if you're going to be spending maybe $300 to set up a 4-foot by 8-foot bed, you got to look over the course of life. Whether the continuing cost is going to be in it, well, you're going to have to feed it more compost because it's going to use up the nutrition of the soil. You got to put more nutrition. But the soil is so light, and it's so fertile, and it's so easy to cultivate, and it doesn't take anything to weed. I got some little ryegrass seeds that blew in here, and it's nothing to pull them out, and plants growing it so well. Now, Mel Bartholomew actually recommends only making them 6 inches deep because he said the soil's so good and rich, a plant only needs 6 inches. Well, I'm a more is more kind of girl. My beds are 10 inches deep, so I like to have a little bit more. Another thing that Mel does is he puts a weed block on the bottom of his beds. So you just set it and you want to put the weed block in. I don't do that either. I just layer the bottom of the bed with several layers, at least 6 layers of newspaper. Get it wet. That will stop weeds from coming up, but it'll eventually break down and go away. And then the roots that you have and the plants you put in will be able to go down, because there could be minerals locked in your subsoil underneath the bed, and you want your plant to be able to have access to the widest variety of minerals it can. So if you put that weed block, it's not just blocking things from going up, it's also blocking things from going down. I don't think that's good. I think you should let your plants put in even deeper roots if they want to into the native soil.
And you've got a hugel bed under here, so you want to be able to harvest those nutrients.
And there's something else. This is a technique that I learned from John Kaler, I think, or John Kohler at growingyourgreens.com. Learn organic gardening, growing your greens on YouTube. he likes to put in rock, he calls it rock dust. I call them mineral supplements. I mean, that's what minerals are, is they're rocks. He likes the square foot gardening method of soil, and he likes to supplement it with the rock dust. This right here is azomite. This is Texas green sand. This is Planters 2 minerals. They're just different rocks that have been quarried, or in this case I believe they've been mixed, a variety that just provide more nutrients in your area. That's one of the, in my opinion, one of the shortcomings of permaculture, is that sure, you're putting in plants that are going to completely harvest everything that you have there. They're going to send those tap roots down deep, gather up all the minerals in that subsoil and bring it to the surface. The only problem is they're only going to be able to harvest what's there. And if you compost something, you're only going to be able to compost and reintroduce the minerals back of what's there. If you're in an area that doesn't have this mineral or that mineral, you have to bring it. And if you use products like these, you're giving a all-you-can-eat buffet to your vegetables.
So you're dealing with a broader spectrum of minerals.
Exactly, exactly. You put this in, and if the plant doesn't want it, they're going to leave it in the soil. If they want it, it's there and they can take it. So that Mel's mix of soil, the 1/3 vermiculite, 1/3 compost, that's a multi-source compost, and 1/3 peat moss or peat moss and coconut fiber, I use that, plus I supplement. I also use lava sand, but I don't have any bags right now. I supplement with Texas green sand, lava sand, Planters 2 minerals by Soil Menders, and azomite.
There you have it. And something else that you notice is that you've got a bunch of your leftover leaves are up here, creating your rows. I mean, I'm up here trying to be quiet while we're doing this video, and we've just got leaves up in here and hoses, and you got bark and.
It's still kind of a mess.
Well, and it usually is.
Creation.
Right.
What I'm trying to do is, in between my beds, I decided to go ahead and put my leaves down that I was previously doing in a big compost, and I'm sheet composting in place.
Okay.
So this way, when I'm walking around my beds, I'm not stepping into mud puddles. I'm on top of the mulch. And then if I need to, it will slowly compost in place. I can actually scrape it up and put it in the garden if I need to, or I can just let it stay in place, and the minerals and nutrients that are in this compost are going to go in the spot, and they're going to leach down into the soil.
And as we walk on this stuff, it's going to compost in even more.
Oh, yeah.
See, and there's just...
Yeah. This right here, Jack Spirko, has inspired me. I'm in Zone 8. A little bit warmer than he is in Fort Worth here in Northeast Texas. Our forest here, he's out on the plains, I'm in the forest. The forest tends to have a moderating influence on our weather. He is trying some citrus, growing them in the ground, and he's inspired me to try. Apparently the secret is you got to get them really well established, get a good root system in there. They're more likely to freeze if they're in the pot and you forget to bring them inside, because that pot is exposed. If they're in the ground, they have the heat from the ground. So I went ahead and I got brave. I put some lemon trees, lime trees, orange trees.
And this one right here is clementine.
Yeah, I have a Satsuma orange. So we're gonna see. They're supposed to be hardy to Zone 7. We are gonna see. Down in San Antonio, which is gateway to South Texas, they actually have citrus orchards down there. But Texas is a big state.
Yeah, we've got all of it.
It's a little colder. It gets a little colder up here, but shoot, it's worth the shot. And once again, these are trees. What are trees? Trees are soil creators. Even if I don't get a good harvest off of them, they are creating soil for me. Right.
And, and I've also talked to Dawn today. We're going to get over to Bob Wells Nursery there in Lindale and get some of his weird trees that are just awesome.
Yeah, I'm really eager to get one of those cold hardy avocados. That is exciting to me.
Yep. Okay, so here's all your different citrus trees and what you're doing here. Now, I'm standing over here. Let's look at this real quick. You got some serious stuff for this. You love this.
Well, before I started realizing how important organic really was, I always liked Miracle-Gro. Who doesn't like Miracle-Gro? Miracle-Gro really does make your stuff grow like crazy. But I was able at Big Lots, actually, to find the Miracle-Gro organic garden soil. And something that I've learned about trying to farm with organic methods is that when you put the synthetic fertilizers in, the nitrogen in particular is so strong that the nitrogen will just burn up all the carbon. Carbon is the organic matter. So all the organic matter in your soil, if you have so much nitrogen in it, it'll actually burn it up. That's the mechanism that is turning your soil back into sand or back into clay, because you're just burning up all of the organic matter. So if you try to stick with organic choices, it's a longer, slower time release of nutrients, and hopefully you'll be able to hang on to that precious organic matter in your soil, which is where the fertility is, and it's also what's nurturing the microbial life in your soil.
There you go. Okay, let's move over to another one. Okay, this is entertaining. We have now killed 2 devices.
I talk so much, I'm on my 3rd device now.
The camcorder has completely run out of the memory card. I didn't think to bring another card. My iPhone has now run out of memory, so now we're back to the 3rd device. Okay. I gotta love the iPhones. Okay.
I want to talk about the stuff that I really wanted to talk about that I thought was most important.
Here we go. We've got an agenda.
I think I need to start prioritizing.
There you go. Go ahead.
I think if you're new to gardening, the easiest method to do would be the square foot gardening, because the soil mixture is so forgiving. It just really idiot proofs you. Okay. In the square foot gardening, what you're primarily relying on is that 1/3 vermiculite, 1/3 sphagnum peat moss, or 1/3 peat moss cut with coconut fiber, and then the final third is with the compost. It has to be from at least 5 different sources so that you have a broad range of nutrition for your plants and for your soil's microbial life. I think that that's really good. Of course, the problem is you're spending a lot of money buying those things, especially in the beginning. But one of the things about square foot garden is you never make it 4 feet wide. If you were to do the mitt-lighter method gardening, you put in a bed, you make it 4 feet wide. You do John Jevons grow biointensive garden, you put it 4 feet wide. Why? Because these are all dealing with the human body. The human body, the average human, needs to have it no deeper than 4 feet so that from either side they can reach across. So if I were starting in gardening or trying to expand in gardening and trying to figure out what I could do, I would go ahead and invest in the material. It doesn't cost a lot to get the 2x10s or 2x8s or even 2x6s to make your beds. And you just nail them together, screws. It's not real hard carpentry. You can have your 8-footers cut in half at the Home Depot or Lowe's, and then just knock them together when you get home. If you go ahead and create those beds, then you have the infrastructure in place for a lot of different gardening techniques. If you have the money, you can go ahead and start off with a Mel's Mix garden bed. If you don't, you can just, do like I do. I harvest my neighbor's leaves and make my own compost. Do like Joe does. He gets the electric company to bring him his wood chips. There are ways to, to try to save money on the process. But if you start off with your 4-foot beds, your 4-foot wide beds, that will make life a lot easier for you. And it will also be able, if you switch from style to style gardening, you'll have something already set up for you to be able to do it. Also, if we have enough time for the on the recording, I really want to talk about Steve Solomon's organic gardening mix. I've really made a big point on that organic for the long-term health of the soil is better. I think one of the best organic fertilizer mixes is Steve Solomon's, and you can use it as an adjunct to your grow biointensive, or to your square foot gardening, or to your permaculture. I wouldn't do the mitt-lighter. I didn't talk about mitt-lighter. Mitt-lighter is completely synthetic gardening. I would consider it worst case scenario. You're going to get pretty vegetables. I don't know what the nutrition content of those vegetables are going to be, but they got mitt-lighters, still worth looking at. They got good trellis system, good irrigation system, and you're still working off of that 4-foot bed. So it's not like there's nothing to offer on mitt-lighter. It's just that's not where I would go. But so except for mitt-lighter, for any other gardening, this organic fertilizer mix would be your best bet. Steve Solomon's mix, he starts off with 4 parts seed meal. Now the seed meal, it can be cottonseed meal, it can be alfalfa meal, it can be blood meal. What I do, my personal mix, is I do 2 parts alfalfa meal, 1 part cottonseed meal, 1 part blood meal. That right there is going to cover your nitrogen. Okay, then the next part he adds lime. Well, different soils at different parts of the country have different pH levels. Some soils are acid, some soils are alkaline. With the lime mix that he gives you, I think is balanced enough that over time it will still provide the other trace elements that your garden would need. So what is that mixture? It's 1 part lime, but that lime will be 1/3 agricultural limestone, which is just crushed limestone, 1 part dolomitic lime, and then 1 part gypsum. Gypsum is normally added to clay soils, alkalinic soils. So it's not like the other limes which are added to neutralize or sweeten acidic soils, but there are other minerals in the gypsum that make it valuable. So do not use hydrated lime. Hydrated lime is very strong. It's not for this mixture. I would have soil testing done, make sure my soil was really so acidic that I had to use the hydrated lime for it. I would not add it to this organic mixture. Also, you can burn yourself with hydrated lime. You get in your eyes, you can burn yourself. Okay, so you've got your 4 parts seed meal, which I use the alfalfa, cottonseed, and blood. You've got your 1 part limestone. Then you also need 1 part of a phosphorus source. What I use is bone meal. So I add 1 part bone meal. And then to really kickstart this mixture, what really makes it good is add 1 part kelp meal. And your kelp meal is probably going to be the most expensive ingredient of that recipe. But the kelp meal, it not only has nutrients in it, there's also certain growth hormones in the kelp that will really supercharge your plants. And when you have this mixture, it's applied to your garden at the rate of 4 to 6 quarts per 100 square feet. Steve Solomon recommends also putting in a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of composted cow manure. But if you add that, he calls this complete organic fertilizer. If you add the Steve Solomon complete organic fertilizer recipe, you will enhance your results from your square foot garden, from your permaculture garden, from your Hugel bed garden, or from your John Jeppens Grow Bio-Intensive garden.
Wow. That's a good list, a lot of intensity. Well, this place has come a long way in a short time, and me and Dawn keep talking on the side here, and we're just touching on things to talk about. There's a lot more to talk about. She had a whole 12-page outline.
Yeah.
We got stuff all over, and yeah, maybe Jack will want to come out here and interview one day, but it's all over the place. And over here we can see there's some of your trees.
Jack is amazing. Jack and Dorothy Spirko, they're so gracious. They're so wonderful.
All right. Well, good deal. Okay. Well, we'll walk around here another minute or two, and we'll go from there and see what else we come up with. Okay. Here's the plum trees that my sister stole from Dawn's house. She was out back digging up, and then we've still got strawberries, and I think there's some peaches in there from the other place. So there you have it. And I just looked at the back of this phone and saw that my son dropped his iPhone, and I'm going to go choke him now. We will return. Okay. This is really funny because Dawn's been ranting about this all day, and we just haven't had a chance to get over here. Now, first off, you got to tell them the story about the tree you're standing under.
Okay, this right here, this tree was on the fence line, the cedar tree. It went all the way down to the ground. We had to cut it up to be able to get the fence underneath it. And this right here, this shows exactly what I'm talking about. A tree creates soil. Look at that. Look at how rich that is. That's just from the tree litter. It's not even the tree itself rotting, it's just from leaves shedding. And you can see the very edge of the soil in the pasture, there's been no difference of fertilizer or anything the way this ground was treated. The very edge of the soil is where the tree was